I downloaded an image of a violin from Pixabay to use as my main image in my layout. So I'm going to create a new document. I'm going to go to File and New, and I'm going to choose the settings here. The settings that I have already are correct. You want width 10, height 15, resolution 72, and color mode is CMYK because we're going to be designing this for print. Also, the background content, by default, yours will probably be white, but I'm going to make mine black. And the first thing I'm going to do is to bring in that image of the violin. So what I'm going to do is make that a floating window. And then I'm just going to drag that over onto my document. And when I do that, I find that it's really large. So I'm going to hold Shift and Option and then drag from one of the corners just to make that smaller. And I can either set that transformation by clicking this checkbox or double clicking inside of the image. And I'm going to double click in the image. And let's take a look at the original layout. So the original layout, I've got some text in here, and I have my violin image, and it's offset. It's off to the right a little bit so that I have room for my text. So what I'm going to do, just to demonstrate the use of something called a layer mask, I'm going to select this Mostly Mozart Festival text that I've already laid out, and I'm going to drag that into my new document. And I want to position this violin a little bit differently. So I'm going to move that over a little bit. And I'm moving it over to the right, and when that happens, I could see that the edge of the image is not going all the way to the edge of the document. I've got some of this black background showing. And I really don't want this effect. I don't want this to look like a hard edge here. So I'm going to soften this edge and blend it in with this black background using something called a layer mask. So I'm going to click on my layer with my violin, and let me rename that first. We'll just call that violin. And I'm going to click on the icon that is saying Add Layer Mask, and it links my layer mask to my to the image layer. So I'm going to make sure that I have this layer mask selected. It's got this little white selection box around it because I want to make sure, it's really important to make sure that we're working on the mask and not on the image. So again, click on that mask, and then I'm going to use the brush tool, and I want to make sure that I check my settings of my brush. And right now I've got the size of the brush at 200 pixels and hardness 0. The hardness determines the how soft or hard the edge of your brush is going to be. How much a 0% hardness is going to make sure that the brush is going to blend in with any background color. So I'm going to leave that 0%. For now, I'm going to make mine a little bit larger. I'm going to make it 250 pixels. And then I am going to go back to my tool menu and make sure that my foreground color is black. So in Photoshop, you've got a foreground and a background color. Foreground color overlaps the background color. So right now the white is active in the foreground. I'm going to be painting with black, so I'm going to switch these by clicking this little double arrow so that now the black is in the foreground and the white is in the background. So this means that I'm going to be painting on my layer mask with the black. And when I paint with black on my layer mask, that is going to hide the pixels of the image below it. So as I paint with black along the edge of this violin image, it's hiding those pixels and it's blending them in with that black background that I have back there. So I'm just going to blend this in with the background. And I kind of like that effect. Another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hide some of the pixels or blend them into that black background behind this Mozart text so that I can read the text a little bit more. So I'm going to change the size of my brush by clicking on the bracket key on my keyboard, the left bracket key, which will make the brush smaller. Now if I was to click on the right bracket key, it would make the brush larger. So I just want that to be a little bit smaller, and I'm going to, let me Command Z to undo that. I'm just going to paint in with that. All right, so that's kind of the effect that I want. One advantage of using a mask, and instead of just painting black directly on my image, is that if I want to make some kind of a change, I can do that. One thing I can do is I can hide this or disable this mask. So when I disable that mask, you can see the original image as it is. I haven't made any changes directly on that original image. If I re-enable that mask, it will hide those pixels that I painted over with black. Another thing I can do is I can show some of those pixels on the image below my mask by painting with white. So if I switch the white to the foreground, and now I'm going to paint with white, then you can see if I paint over this, it's going to kind of like has the effect of erasing what I did before. So I'm showing the pixels on the image below it. I'm going to hit Command Z because I kind of liked what I had. But maybe just here I'll paint with white just to kind of soften this up a little bit. All right, so I kind of like this. Let me actually make this really large so I get a really soft edge here. And okay, let me go back to black and hide some of this again. All right, so that's a technique that you can use to work with your images so that you have a little bit more flexibility on how you size and position your images in your layout.